welcoming refugees with open doors in Germany and across Europe. This is what our project is about. We founded Refugees Welcome to bring together refugees and welcoming society in order to make possible a peaceful and enriching living together of both sides. Our aim is to realize a human and constructive accommodation of refugees instead of focusing on isolation and mass accommodation in often insupportable conditions. In Germany alone, so far we have matched 310 refugees with shared flats. Thus, 310 refugees could leave mass accommodation behind them and really start a new life in Germany in a welcoming and supporting environment. So, why is Refugees Welcome such an important project in these days, and what is the overall situation in which Refugees Welcome is active? Currently, worldwide, 60 million persons are fleeing war and persecution, what is the highest number of persons on the flight since the Second World War. Most refugees that come to Europe come from the Middle East region, where they are pushed to escape to literally save their lives. As a consequence, in 2015, about 1 million persons came to Europe by sea, in particular by the Aegean Sea, so from Turkey to the Greek islands. And hundreds of persons lost their lives during this very dangerous journey. The refugee crisis was and is marked by a total absence of a common solution and solidarity among the member states, and they rather left Greece alone with this very high burden of thousands of people daily arriving on its coasts. However, most of these refugees didn't want to stay in Greece, as in Greece refugees live on the street in lamentable conditions and don't receive any support from the government. On the other hand, Germany is one of the most popular countries for refugees, with about 1 million persons coming to our country in 2015 in the hope for a better life and in the hope for decent conditions after months of deprivations. Instead, in many cases, they were confronted with completely overburdened administrations that were not willed and sometimes not able to provide these people with equivalent shelter and with decent conditions that made possible integration in the society. The Lage so in Berlin, what is the German administration for asylum seekers, where you have to get registered, and on these pictures are thousands or hundreds of people lining up in front of the administration and not being able to enter. And in Germany, as soon as you are not registered, you are not receiving any support from the government. So the refugees who could not get registered and they had to live on the streets or in parks for weeks till they got this registration done. So for months, people had to live in so-called emergency accommodation. It's accommodation that was foreseen to last only for some days, but then often lasted for weeks or even for months. These facilities completely miss private sphere and are not giving the calm and peaceful space to the refugees that they are longing for so much after often years in war regions and the long and life-threatening journey to Germany. And of course, living in such conditions makes it almost impossible to start your new life in Germany and to get in contact with the host society. So, why can't refugees simply live in flat shares, in family homes and in private accommodation? That's the question we asked ourselves, seeing the need for a different model, for an alternative model that gives refugees really the chance to build up a new life here. And we found a way to make it possible. So with the project Refugees Welcome, we want to show that a living together of refugees and welcoming society is possible, and that each of us can contribute to welcoming these people here in Germany. We want to show that there is not only one answer to the refugee crisis, the current answer of reinforcing Fortress Europe and of strengthening fear and often violent rejection among the population. We want to give a constructive answer that shows both welcoming society and the refugees that we can all benefit from this immigration to our country and one day become one society without any excluded groups. The idea is that this living together, the sharing of an apartment, leads to mutual exchange. This is an essential aspect that helps both sides to know each other better and to reduce prejudices. In times of an omnipresent perception of a threat to our society and to our values, this exchange is so crucial. The idea is that the positive experience of one successful living together is spreading in circles as both sides are telling their friends about it, who in turn tell their friends about it, and so on. And like that, we are able to reach a high number of persons with our message and with our project and convince other people from contributing too. Now to get a bit more concrete, how is Refugees Welcome and the Living Together concretely working? So Refugees Welcome is the internet-driven project, so we have a platform, and if you have a free room in your apartment what you would like to offer to a refugee, you simply sign up your apartment on our website and are then directly allocated to one of our team members who prepares you for the living together, talking about legal issues, cultural sensibilization, and so on. Then we're going to contact a refugee that wants to move out of mass accommodation, and if both sides agree to get to know each other, we put them in contact with the so-called buddy, what is something like the personal contact person who is going to accompany the process of living together from the first meeting on. We then support with the financing of the room, and at least in Germany, in most cases, a financing by the government is possible if you follow a certain procedure. And then already the refugee can move in, so the process is not complicated at all, and of course we are always there in case of questions or in case of problems. I would now like to give 2 concrete examples to show how one often spontaneous decision to help can really and remarkably change the life of at least one other person. So, you could see Frida and her daughter living together with Hank and Isabel. Like many others, Hank and Isabel always wanted to help and to do something, and felt repelled by the reality of thousands of people that crossed by feet several countries to finally reach Germany, and then to be isolated and to be in indecent accommodation and being confronted with racist attacks and not finding a place where they could really feel protected. When then accidentally they got to know our project, they really spontaneously decided to help and to offer the free room in their apartment. Frida and her daughter already live in Germany since more than 2 years, but all the time were obliged to stay in a camp in a rural and quite xenophobic area of Germany where they did not have any perspectives at all. And it's not a surprise that particularly women and children are suffering a lot in mass accommodation where they don't have any safe and protected space at all. And nevertheless, during all the time, they have not been allowed to leave the camp, to live another place, to build up a new life, where Frida could have found a job, and what is most important for her, to give a good future, a good start in the life to her little daughter. Then moving to Berlin, to the apartment of Hank and Isabel, made it possible to do some first steps in that direction and to build up a new life in Germany. And still, her life is complicated by the Berlin administration, who is not willing to give her work permission. But Frida, thanks to living together with Hank and Isabel, found a German network of persons giving her support in this cause, and this is quite important. This is Safir from Afghanistan, who was working for the NATO military mission in Afghanistan as a translator, and was by that pushed to leave his country. And he's one of the refugees who had to suffer from these lamentable conditions at the Berlin administration I was talking about before. Before living together with Florian and Anna, Safi was obliged to live for several months in an emergency shelter where he had to share his room with 9 other persons and never managed to sleep the night through and to finally find some peace. Safi's flight to Germany took several weeks, including dangerous passages in an old truck where they had to stay for hours and didn't know if finally somebody would come to release them. Then arriving in Germany, finally, with the wish to build up a new life, but then to be obliged to stay in this emergency shelter that condemned its inhabitants to wait day in and day out, was almost insupportable for Safi. Today he feels that he could finally start his new life, having found a job as a translator again and living together with Florian and Anna So he has found a place on his own room, where he feels comfortable, where he feels at home, and he enjoys spending his life with these both persons and having the daily exchange and making new experiences. From the very beginning on, we were overwhelmed with the high number of persons that felt inspired by our idea and contacted us in order to give us some support in the implementation. And there were not only German persons contacting us, but persons from all over Europe and even from all over the world. And as a consequence, Refugees Welcome today is active in 12 European countries and Canada as well. And as you can see, there are 5 other countries that are still in the phase of preparation but are going to be online soon. So, from the 700 matches we have realized so far, 390 matches were done in these other country groups of Refugees Welcome, which shows how successful these groups already are. Just 2 weeks ago, we had a meeting of Refugees Welcome International in Poland with representatives from all those country groups. And it was a great experience for all of us, in particular for us, the Germans who founded this project, because we really got aware of the fact how this objective, this message of welcoming societies is really spreading. And we got to know all these people that are active in very, very different national contexts, but they are all sharing this same vision, and this is something that produces an incredible energy, and it's something that can make us really powerful. Before coming to Albania, I was asking myself the question, what actually meant the common for me as one of the founders of Refugees Welcome, and how could we and how can other valuable initiatives share this vision of the common with the society and convince it from contributing actively? So our vision of the common is we want to help in the construction of a society that welcomes refugees in their midst by sharing their homes and making possible a living together, instead of isolating them and perceiving them as a threat. We dream of a society that considers the living together as an enrichment for all the parties engaged and that wants to get active in the process of its forming. When talking about how we implemented this vision and how can other projects implement this vision, the first point, or the first and most important step, was to define our main objectives and the respective actions we wanted to realize. And it's essential always to keep in mind this overall aim that unifies you with persons all over your country, or even all over Europe, or all over the world. And this is so important because, of course, daily work isn't always the most passionate or the most interesting. So it's important to keep in mind what overall aim you're doing this work for. Then we learned how important it is to offer a platform that makes people feel that they are contributing with their individual support, with their individual room offer to one bigger aim. This feeling of belongingness clearly makes people more ready to get engaged actively. And we are convinced that real changes in our society are only possible with the active support and engagement of the society itself. Then, a further essential aspect is networking, as common actions with initiative that share your attitude, make you more hearable on high levels, and strong voices can't be ignored. Thanks to Refugees Welcome, I've made the experience that you don't need to be in a powerful position to really initiate changes. Then, last but not least, the aspect I was trying to focus on during my whole speech. Have a great vision, and even if it seems exaggerated or unrealistic, set your high targets and don't underestimate the impact you can have, because it can be surprisingly and overwhelmingly high. And it's always a vision that convinces people from contributing and supporting you. We concretely experience that the current crisis only became such because of the restrictive and destructive answers of our governments to these people fleeing war and persecution. But society is not obliged to give the same answer, and by participating, for example, in Refugees Welcome and offering a living together, we are able to give a strong and human answer to these persons and to give an open-hearted welcome to them. In this sense, welcoming refugees and providing a place to stay is something every one of us can contribute to, and we are looking forward to more people that, in the idea of this spirit, share their homes with refugees and make possible their start in a new life here in Europe. Thank you.